You just gonna listen to the whole thing?
I was gonna let it roll until the end. Welcome back, everyone. Episode 23 of
The Chiss Ascendancy.
Today we're talking about Jango Fett. Jango Unchained, but the D is silent because it's non-existent. Whenever I found out that Jango Unchained was a movie, I was like, this is copyright infringement. Before we get started, though, today I almost got in a fight with Adam at the gas station because he was going in there to get drinks and I had to get gas, so I popped in to get some Reese's sticks because they're delicious. Anyways, I'm in line and I'm like, oh my god, I forgot a mask. Because in Houston, they're doing this trial run, 8 days of mask to see if 8 crazy nights to see if we can kill the coronavirus, I guess. Anyways, I forgot my mask in the car. So I'm turning around from getting my snacky snack, and I'm walking towards the checkout, and some guy with a hood on and a mask like taps my thigh. And I was like, my first thing I noticed was, oh, I'm not wearing a mask. And I was like, who does this guy think he is? Tapping me to tell me to put my mask on. And then I look up, and it's Adam. So I was
Got him!
Yeah, I was so upset for about half a second, and I was like, oh, it's my friend. So anyways, that was today. So we're talking about Jango Fett, but there was a little bit of newsy news before we jump into that. So there's, I don't know if you've read it or have heard about it, but there was a book that came out about a year ago, a little bit more than a year ago, called Myths and Fables, I want to say. Star Wars Myths and Fables. And it was a short story of, like, basically ancient lore, and it's kind of made to think...
It's like Star Wars mythology.
It's like Star Wars mythology, and it's like, yeah, it's very much, you know... Yeah, we believe in Zeus, but maybe all these stories aren't real, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so it's myths and fables, obviously. It's just, it's pretty self-explanatory. But it's a really cool book. And so they're coming out with like pretty much a purely dark side version of that. It's called Dark Legends. And I found a post on Instagram on, I guess I'll give credit to the account, even though you're probably not listening to us, Palpatine's _Empire posted this picture, and it says the upcoming book Dark Legends may be introducing a new Sith into Star Wars canon. And so basically there's a Sith, and he's got like he looks like he's on Exegol from the Emperor's throne room from The Rise of Skywalker. Mm-hmm. And there's the throne there that Palpatine's sitting on, and there's this character that you can't tell if it's a human or whatever. He's got a cloak on. And there's another character next to him that's very much like almost like a Gollum looking character. Yeah. Kind of like werewolf.
Yeah, it's like a more humanoid looking werewolf.
A werewolf from Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And so it says maybe introducing a new Sith. And then it says Star Wars Dark Legends, the follow-up to the acclaimed Star Wars Myths and Fables, is an upcoming canon short story collection. It will feature 7 new fables set in the Star Wars universe, focusing on all things dark and spooky. Maybe they'll throw some Plagueis in there and placate us. Or maybe we can find out a little bit more about Snoke or something. I don't know. It's usually old school stuff, so maybe not. But it says paintings drawn...
Perhaps.
Bane would be cool. You'd be really ticked off, though, when he has that samurai outfit on. It says, paintings drawn, which is ironic, paintings drawn, by the illustrator Grant Griffin were revealed on Friday, one of which included a Sith on Exegol with a never-before-seen curved lightsaber.
How does that work?
I don't know, because to me it's a laser sword. You know what I mean? Like, literally, that's what Luke calls it in Episode 8. He's like, you want me to run in there with a laser sword? And a laser only goes one way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it says, here's what Griffin had to say about the character's interesting weapon. The curved saber was added to the painting later, and if I am not mistaken, it is specific to a particular Sith. So it seems perhaps this Sith indeed is a new character, as currently no one in canon is known to have used one of those sabers. It will be revealed when the book releases on July 28th. So we're only about a month away from the dark side version of Myths and Fables. So I'm super excited about it. It's a really cool concept. And in Legends, there was all kinds of different light weapons, though. Like, they've kind of, in canon, it's been very, like, kept to lightsabers or a double blade or whatever. Of course, you have Kylo Ren's that has, like, the vents on the side because of the cracked kyber crystal. But in Legends, there was a character named Lumaya who was basically a dark side. She was kind of like an acolyte to Darth Vader, and she actually fell in love. She kind of spied on the Rebel Alliance, and she actually fell in love with Luke Skywalker. But then when he found out that she was a Darksider, they fought, and he like gravely injured her. They thought that she died, and she survived with like all kinds of cybernetic enhancements and stuff like that. But she had a light whip.
Yeah, light whip was not like super common, but more common in Legends material. I know. What's the chick from Path of Destruction?
Zana?
No. Zana had
double blade.
Yeah, shorter double blade, so it wasn't like too long for her height because she was short. It was the one that Bane fell in love with initially. She was a Jedi.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Anyway, she fought with a light whip.
Yeah, it's a weird. I don't know. I guess a light whip makes more sense to me than a curved blade because it's just kind of...
Oh, and you know what? The slavers, like the Zygerian slavers, I don't think it was a light whip per se because it wouldn't cut through stuff, but it was like a plasma whip of sorts.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird. I want to know... The science part of my mind wants to know how that works. You know what I mean? Yeah. In a weird way, though, a whip almost makes more sense because you could just have a material that is conducive, specifically with the slavers from Clone Wars. You could have a material that's like it can be electrically charged. So you would have basically a regular whip, and then you would turn the charge on.
When you say conducive, do you mean conductive?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess conducive works too in a way. But yeah, it would be something that you could right. Easily send a charge along.
Yeah, I think like the Zygerians, it's more like if you're a Marvel fan, Omega Red, he has like these long whip-like things that come out of his appendages and lightning travels along them.
But I encourage, if you're listening to this, look up the book Dark Legends because you can see it's kind of like a Grim Reaper looking thing. But when that comes out, we can talk all about it. It's short stories, so I'm sure we'll blow through them. But today
it's all about the most prevalent father in all of the Star Wars universe.
A week removed from Father's Day weekend.
The father of 200,000 and a million more on the way.
Yeah. All the cards, dude.
The Mad Mandalorian.
Even if they all just gave him $1 silver, he would have $200,000 with a million more well on the way. Yes.
I have conspiracy theories about the man who cuts our lawn.
Dude, we need to just get him to cut it on Thursdays.
He does the whole block. That's the problem.
Oh, he's like a city guy?
I don't think he's a city guy. I think he's just got a racket going on in this neighborhood because he sucks at mowing the lawn.
Dude, he really does suck.
He's old. He's middle-aged. He's not, like, ancient.
Bro, he's old.
He's pretty old.
He's not like the grandfather on Coco. He's not like shaking out of his wheelchair. He's a capable human being.
That's funny. So today we're talking about Jango Fett and specifically his backstory from Legends. And so, as you guys know, Boba Fett is my favorite character. And so, isn't it interesting that Boba Fett's not super high on your list? He's number one on mine. But Thrawn is like, he's the wheat among the chaff that connects us. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but what does that have to do with anything?
Well, I was thinking about how Boba Fett's my favorite character, and if I was doing a podcast by myself, I'd probably find some snazzy way to put him somewhere in the title of the podcast. Mm-hmm. But between the two of us, the Chiss Ascendancy was like our clear-cut favorite choice. Yeah. Even though no one knows we exist, if you're listening out there, just
send help.
Just put us on repeat in your sleep. We need bots. YouTube bots. God. Hey, if you can to quote a guilt trip from like a pastor or whatever, it's like if you can use bots to get yourself a nice pair of shoes, you could use bots to wake you up in the morning and get to church. I heard that recently from someone. I can't remember where I heard that from. Anyways, so we are kind of digging into Jango Fett's backstory, and in the Clone Wars, there's that moment where Obi-Wan goes to Mandalore and he's like, hey, I'm looking for a Mandalorian who might be against the Republic or who might do this or that or whatever. And Prime Minister Almec, the guy that's got the neck of Melman from Madagascar.
Did you ever notice that? He has purple eyes.
I did not notice that. But he does have sick armor, we found out.
His armor
from
is
Season
cool.
7.
Too bad he's not really capable hand-to-hand combatant.
Who did he end up dying? Who killed him?
I don't remember, but I remember he went out
Gar Saxon?
Fast. Maybe.
Yeah, but Gar Saxon's got like freaking maul horns on his helmet. Hey, they're gonna make a Black Series of that figure. Oh, mama. Where is the Black Series Jar Jar? I'm gonna say that every time we bring up Black Series until it happens.
You're the one who brings up Black Series. Nobody else talks about it in this room. You're just bringing it up so you can talk about Jar Jar.
No, I'm
convinced.
No, it was a line of thought. It was Gar Saxon, Black
Gar
Series
Saxon
figure.
to Jar Jar?
Yeah, because Black Series
it's a really thin line of thought.
Jar Jar is needed. He's necessary.
A little Newton Balls line of thought right there.
We need a Jar Jar Black Series figure. It's plain as day. We need a Jar Jar way more than we needed like a Commander Bly.
We needed a Commander Bly arc way more than we needed another Jar Jar arc in the Clone Wars, but here we are.
Yeah, but
too many Jar Jar arcs.
Are there really, though?
Any of them is too many.
No, I enjoyed them.
You're going to tell me that you actually enjoyed the series?
All things Star Wars, I love.
I tolerated those at best. I watched them for the continuity.
Dude, it was pretty
easily pass them up and not miss a single thing.
I did like the Indiana Jones Mace Windu Jar Jar episode where Mace Windu's like walking through this Temple of Doom, no problem, and Jar Jar's falling into every booby trap. Somehow lives. Anyways, so our source material for this week is Jango Fett Open Seasons. It's a comic series from way back in the day, actually.
Yeah. It's got a pretty cool layout. It's very similar to, maybe not similar, but the parallels can be seen between the way that it's laid out and the way that Avatar, The Last Airbender, is laid out.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It's like a 4-part series.
Yeah.
And it starts in spring, summer, winter, fall, something like that. What's the first one? Is it fall?
Summer.
Summer. Starts in summer. Summer, spring.
Winter, spring, summer, and fall.
Anyway, so it has seasons that are the names.
It's basically the seasons of his life.
Yeah, but they're also seasons.
Yes. So this one was written by Hayden Blackman, pencil art by Ramon Box, inks by Raul Fernandez, and colors by Brad Anderson. And this first edition, yes, it is. Just so you know, I'm pretty excited. That's my Jeff Goldblum. But yeah,
you can do better than that.
I can. I'll get to it. But this was.
What if they gotten Jeff Goldblum to do Boba Fett or Jango Fett?
You know what? I'll take it.
A Jeff Goldblum Jango Fett would have been hilarious.
Dude, Jeff Goldblum.
He's like, I don't know. Maybe I was in Coruscant.
Whenever he's like, when he says, "You must be very proud," and he'll go, I think you'll find they'll do their job. You'll like it. Dude, I love Jeff Goldblum.
All right, Boba Fett, we're going to Houston. Pack your bags.
Dude, I can watch The World According to Jeff Goldblum nonstop on Disney Plus.
I watched like the first 3 episodes and I was like, all right, that's enough of that.
No, dude, it's awesome. I love. He asked like these really interesting questions. He's like, so.
I like how indirectly he's sourcing his information.
What do you mean?
Like, I don't know. He'll just like go to really obscure avenues of research that are like kind of related to the topic, but not really related to the topic. I mean, I guess they are, but.
I like how he
was in the denim episode and he went like mine digging for like scraps of denim that were left behind. You know what I mean? Like there were other things that he could have done to research denim, but he went to find like the oldest pieces of denim.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was interesting.
It's very Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah, that's true.
It's true to himself. Jeff. So yeah, this came out, this collection, so they were individual comics, but this collection, I guess what would you call that? What do you call it whenever they put all the comics together and they give you one book?
An omnibus? That's a collection of a bunch of different comic series.
But that's not what I'm thinking of. It's not a trade paperback. Dadgum. I don't know. Collection, I don't know. There's a specific word I'm blanking out on. But this one came out in 2002. So this is 18 years old, guys. So now I feel old as death. But Jango Fett open seasons. You start in summer. So it's really cool in the collection. You've got the for the video viewers at home, I'm holding up the book so you can see. But as you go in, you see the cool.
You mean the audio viewers? We love you.
No, I'm saying for if you're a video, I guess for the audio viewers, I'm holding it up for the video viewers is what I meant. But I'm holding. You can see the cover that would have been on the actual comic book itself.
Yeah.
Pretty dope. And so
I think my favorite thing. Maybe not like my favorite thing, because there was a lot of cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I think something that I really appreciated was the changing of Jango's armors.
Throughout the seasons?
In each one, because the first, he's a kid, he doesn't really have armor yet. And then the second one, you see him, he's kind of in his stride, and his armor's colored like Boba Fett.
Yeah.
And then it just kind of changes, and then finally at the end.
Well, it's really cool because
the finale, you have him with his armor that you see in episode 2. Right.
So you've got in the very first page, you've got what we know from Attack of the Clones is Dooku's ship, that one that has the crazy
the
sailboat.
Solar Sailor.
Yeah. So he's going down someplace, and dude, it's wild. He's in some crazy temple or something. And I guess this is where Darth Sidious's house. It doesn't say where it is. But he's going to see Darth Sidious, and there's like a freaking crazy monster that's trying to kill Dooku on his way in. Imagine having to cut that thing's arm off every time you go to visit your boss. It's like, I'm already going to get chewed out when I get there. I don't want to
count Dooku, so you don't really care.
Yeah.
Because it's a minor nuisance at most.
So you've got Sidious talking to him, and he's talking about they need to create the clone army. So this is years and years before Attack of the Clones.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably during Phantom Menace. And so basically he's talking about, I need you to oversee the creation of this clone army. Mm-hmm. And so he says, Count Dooku says, I sense the victor will be a bounty hunter named Jango Fett. And so it's interesting because he says the galaxy's most dangerous bounty hunters have been pitted against one another. And you don't really see that part very much. You just kind of get his backstory.
Yeah, I think they wanted to give some weight to the trial period that Jango will have won, but they wanted to mostly focus on how Jango was created.
Yeah. I love this art style, too. Like when I was a kid and I used to draw Mandalorians, like this is kind of the art style that I would go for. And so he's, from the very beginning, he's kind of showing you like what his backstory is. And it's interesting because you see Jango Fett walking through a field on Concord Dawn, which is canonized through Clone Wars. And it's interesting because as Jango Fett's walking through this field, he looks like young Boba Fett. Mm-hmm. And Jango Fett's dad looks a lot like older Jango Fett.
Yeah.
And so basically...
Which makes sense.
Right. Basically, this guy dies. His dad dies by the hand of a man named Vizsla. So whenever
this is kind of the inspiration for Pre Vizsla in the Clone Wars arc.
Yeah, so when the Clone Wars came out and I was watching that for the first time, I was like, oh, this scumbag. I knew he was bad news from the second his name was Vizsla. Mm-hmm. So it's funny because as soon as it was like, hello, this is our so-and-so Pre Vizsla, even though like you kind of know he's going to be the bad guy, as soon as they said that, I was like, this guy's trash. Don't trust him. But it's cool, so... they end up killing Jango's dad, and Jango is saved by a man named Jaster Muriel. And Jaster is the leader of the Mandalorians. So,
and contrary to the fact that his name is just slightly removed from Jester, this guy does not joke around.
I thought you were going to say Blaster. Jaster Blaster.
Yeah, he takes more after the Blaster part than
for sure.
The Jester part.
So in this old school story, the Mandalorian and Death Watch line is much blurrier in the Clone Wars, where it's like they're a radical group, but we don't know who they are. It's kind of like in the Clone Wars, it's like a sleeper cell where it's like we don't know who they are in society. But in the comic,
Death Watch,
it's
I think more strongly aligns themselves with the Mandalorians in their own minds. Like they've never left that mindset. They have never said for themselves, we're no longer Mandalorians.
Right. They're basically like purist. Like, this is what we used to do. This is what we should still be doing. And so, but in this comic book, the Death Watch are, as you noticed, called ex-Mandalorians.
Right.
They've been excommunicated.
Yeah,
because
Jaster specifically calls them ex-Mandalorians. So that, I mean, even though we've kind of seen it in now the Mandalorian series... the line is still a little blurry on what exactly defines a Mandalorian. So it was kind of cool to see that even back in 2002, it was idealized as more of a creed, like more of a...
It's a belief system.
It's more of a societal thing than it is a race
Well,
thing.
in the old school Legends material, the Mandalorians started as a species. There was a species, and they weren't humans. They were a weird... They kind of look like Alien from Alien versus Predator.
It kind of reminds me...
Or not Alien, I'm sorry, Predator.
How Sith were a species first.
Yeah, they kind of look like the Predator. And so, they're called like the Groll, or I can't remember. I don't know, you could look it up, I guess. But,
got another confession to make.
I got another confession to make.
Please stop yelling.
So, as time goes on, the Mandalorians become kind of a belief system or a way of life. So that's kind of the same through canon and Legends, especially what we know from the Mandalorian. But that always kind of made me and you think... Okay, so if Mandalorians...
You mean the Tong?
The Tong, that's it, yeah. Very very much look like the Predator, right?
Yeah.
They got like the head tail looking things. So it's weird because in Clone Wars, they're like, well, I fought a Mandalorian named Jango Fett, Obi-Wan says. And Prime Minister Almec is like, no, that's just a thug in Mandalorian armor. We wouldn't own that, or blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Like, he definitely distances himself. And so it's like, well, I don't know. It's kind of weird.
Politician thing to do.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why he's doing it. And I think it's so silly because Prime Minister Almec is obviously a snake in the grass, but Fett haters are like, see, told you they weren't Mandalorians. And I was like, oh yeah, because Almec said so, you idiot. Like, he's obviously not a trustworthy dude. But the whole time we've been thinking to ourselves, like, so what is a Mandalorian then? And then again, towards the end of season 1 of The Mandalorian on Disney Plus, he says it's not a race, it's a creed. So to me, Jango and Boba are back in the fold, in my opinion. What do you think?
I think Jango more so than Boba, at least from what I've seen of Boba's canon story.
Right. Well,
just
yeah.
Because Jango, at least because we never get a replacement story for him. You know what I mean? This is pretty much, to my knowledge, all we have. And Jango was clearly adopted into the Mandalorians.
Right.
The leader of his little faction says, welcome to the Mandalorians at the end of it. So that's as much welcome into it as anything in my mind.
Right. Yeah, that moment is the same.
And I suppose because, Jango viewed Boba as a son, even though in this comic it says he wants somebody to be Jaster's legacy, which I thought was kind of a cool way of looking at it. Like he just wanted to carry on that legacy.
Yeah. Well, I think that Jango is Jaster's legacy, but he knows he won't be around forever. And so Jaster kind of becomes... It's very like... This old school Legends material is so much more in line with The Mandalorian than I think the way that Clone Wars shows Mandalorians are. I don't know. It's weird.
Like, depending on which Mandalorian culture you want to pick up on.
The good one? The old school one? To me, it's like the... you've got Jaster who just adopts this kid out of nowhere. And it's like, you're with me, I'm going to protect you. Mm-hmm. That is very much how Din Djarin was adopted into the Mandalorians. Right. Ironically, into the Death Watch, which is the bad guys in this book.
And kind of the bad guys in Clone Wars, too.
Yeah.
But, like we've said in the past,
It's blurry.
It's blurry. It kind of shows the good side of the Death Watch, just as we see the bad side of the Rebellion in Rogue One.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's not... It's kind of interesting because as cut and dry as I want it to be, I like the real-world feel of... Not everything is so cut and dry.
Yeah.
Make sense?
Yeah.
I remember the first time that I met someone who was like ex-military, and I was like, what was it like? And he was like, it was hell. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
Because I just expected it to be like a movie where it was like, I loved every second of it killing Nazis, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, like you have to do some crazy crap. You have to do some things that you're not necessarily okay with. Like very Cassian Andor from the beginning of Rogue One.
Right.
So by the end of the first section, by the end of the summer comic, the guy that is attacking Jango is killed, and Jaster asked Jango Fett, do you feel any better? And Jango says, no, I don't know, not yet. And Jaster says, good, welcome to the Mandalorians.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Very Mandalorian
yeah.
and the child relationship going on there.
Another cool
a little more sentience and grown-upness from Jango here, because the child's still a baby, basically.
Yeah.
What were we going to say?
Another cool quote from that particular comic is when Dooku is giving Sidious some of Jango's backstory, telling him that he's an orphan, and Sidious says the most dangerous men are always orphans.
Yeah.
Which is an obvious allusion to Anakin as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's pretty cool. And himself, how much you take Plagueis into account, because Palpatine orphaned himself, killing his parents.
Oh my god.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot about that. I've got to reread Plagueis so we can do an episode.
It's a good book.
Okay, so...
It's a nice book.
It's a nice book. Into part 2, you're 10 years before the Battle of Geonosis, so exactly towards the end of Phantom Menace, because there's 10 years between episodes 1 and 2 of Star Wars. And he's taken this guy captive that was his
name Silas?
Oh crap, I can't remember his name.
Pretty sure it's...
Yeah, Silas. Yeah. Dang, he looks like crap.
Well, he's just been tortured.
Right. So yeah, you've got Jango's armor right here is super sick. It's green, and he's got the pistols, double holsters still, but he's got just like a red circle over his green chest plate. Super sick. And then they're doing basically a get together, very rebellion-esque, Death Star plans type of thing. And you have Jango standing alongside Jaster Mareel and a character named Montross. And Montross is kind of a son of a gun because he's actually a double agent. And so as you read on in this section, there's stuff that's going bad, and as you pointed out, it's really cool because they're Mandalorian warships that they're loading into.
Yeah, they
look a lot like Slave One.
Yeah, very clearly precursors to Slave One. I think that's very cool.
Which in now canon material, Slave One was like stolen from some guy somewhere. But I like this backstory better, and it's kind of a cool thing because without the wings and with the solid brown look, it's a pretty cool bridge between prequel era Slave One and old school, Old Republic looking stuff, because the Mandalorians used to have a war vessel called the Basilisk, and it was super cool. And so they're on this plate. I don't really know what they're fighting for, but they're fighting these crazy ape looking things.
I mean, they fight for money.
They're just fighting for fights.
Yeah.
And so they're going, And it's just kind of showing some cool Mandalorian action. Also, if we could get, if this was back in the day when Hasbro was just putting out all kinds of crazy aliens, it would be sick to get some of these King Kong looking ape characters. But it's basically kind of showing Jango growing up. This is his first. This is his first leadership role where he's leading a squad into battle.
First mission with his own squad.
So he's right there with Jaster. They're walking through the forest, and basically by the end here, you find out that the Death Watch is working alongside these apes, and Montross basically turns on Jaster here, and kind of lets him. Vizsla kills him, but Montross is like. He's not really worried about staying with the group at all. I think he started as a good guy, but it was just kind of like
he's clearly
he wanted to lead. He didn't trust Jango's leadership.
Yeah, he's clearly angry about the relationship that Jango and Jaster have. He feels like he's the odd man out.
Yeah.
You know, he says in that particular comic, it's a shame that Jaster views you as his son, or he forgets you're not really his son because it's going to cloud his judgment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's definitely bitter about their connection, and he feels like it's going to give Jango kind of a one-up over him. I guess he feels that Jango will have taken his role without having properly earned it. Right.
And it's really sad because as Dooku is interrogating this guy Silas, he says that's the truth, and he says I believe you. The rest of your visit will be painless, and like Silas is sweating and all this kind of stuff. He just looks like trash. It's cool that he has the Mythosaur tattoo on his shoulder there. And he says the last thing he says is please don't tell Jango.
Yeah, he knows he's gonna die.
It's just really sad.
He's about to die, and he just doesn't want Jango to know that he betrayed him.
Yeah. Like super skinny. He's obviously been starved and tortured.
Yeah, his broken mentally and physically.
Trashed. And he's already going to die. Like, Dooku tells these torture droids stop his heart. And you see the dadgum needle, like he's about to get that lethal injection. And he says, don't tell Jango. And then Dooku, hard as all get out, says, I can't make any promises.
Yeah, he's always hard as nails.
Jeez. Who hurt you? Why don't you take the second half and kind of walk us through?
Sure. So we see... This is the first time we see Dooku actually about to meet Jango, as far as I know. This is still 10 years before Battle of Geonosis. You see Dooku, he's kind of... It looks... I don't know. I don't think this is his castle on Sereno. It looks more like a sanctum. It's got like collectibles from... It's got a heavy bottom. It's got collectibles from... different places.
Yeah.
There's skulls.
It definitely reminds me of Dryden Voss's ship.
Yeah.
In Solo.
Or if you've played The Force Unleashed, the commander in Kashyyyk, he's got his hunting room. And he's talking to Sidious about Jango, and basically now Dooku's giving Sidious his account
of what happened on Galadron. So there's a face-off right here between the Mandalorians and the Jedi.
Yeah, so something that Dooku says about Jango is, Sidious says, how could one man kill so many Jedi? And Dooku says, with his bare hands. Which...
Dadgum. I don't know if I'm a fan of it because it's Jango, but
I like that he's so powerful, but after having read so much, especially printed material about Jedi, I just don't understand how any hand-to-hand combatant could best a Jedi.
Yeah, well, you're getting... I don't know, it's weird. You're getting into that...
Their speed and reflexes are augmented by the Force. I just don't see any competition there.
Yeah. Well, in the same way, though... I just, now knowing as much as I know about Qui-Gon, I don't see a world where Darth Maul can beat him in a fight. As young as Maul was and as experienced as Qui-Gon was. And I know Qui-Gon wasn't like a fighty guy.
Yeah, Qui-Gon just wasn't a fighter. I think Maul was just a better martial artist. You know what I mean?
Maybe. I did read something recently.
Dooku says about Qui-Gon. It's either I've been reading both of these books here lately, so they're kind of blurry in my mind as far as which one's which. Because I've done
Dooku
and Master and Apprentice.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Master and Apprentice, but very well maybe Dooku. Anyway, Dooku says of Qui-Gon that he has an understanding and connection to the living force that may one day rival Master Yoda. Which just kind of shows where...
Which at the end of the day, Qui-Gon passes up Yoda, if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely gets...
I guess that's what the cosmic force...
trail. I think so, but it was his awareness of the living force. You know what I mean? He wasn't so lofty in his ideology and the way that the Jedi kind of get so wrapped up in their own theories and how they feel like it should be, that they kind of reject what it actually is.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Anyway, so in the third comic, we see that Jango has indeed changed his armor to keep up with the latest fashion trends. He's now rocking his silver with maroon accents.
I think he's kind of doing that for Jaster, too.
Perhaps. He's got kind of a blue steel looking thing. And so, we're on a completely different mission. Jango, it seems, knows he's been double-crossed, but he carried out the mission anyway. And he knows that this governor is hiding Vizsla, who, as we saw in the last piece, was not actually dead as we thought at the beginning of the first one.
Right.
So this is turning out to be Jango's kind of lifelong villain. He's killed his actual dad. He's killed his adopted father. Yeah. And so, basically, Vizsla has run this fake mission again. He's, working hand in hand with whoever will have given Jango his information, trying to kill him, trying to wipe out the Mandalorians, get his revenge. This time, because he had a powerful third party, until he had the Jedi come in. And so basically, he has the governor tell the Jedi that everything that
Vizsla's
been doing, the Mandalorians did.
Right.
So they're like, all right, get them, boys. And one thing that's kind of dark is that Vizsla says, send the Jedi to Jango's camp and tell them that the Mandalorians have been killing women and children too. And the governor says, but there's no evidence to support that. And Vizsla says, don't worry, we'll create some.
Jeez.
That's hardcore.
But it kind of shows you how afraid Vizsla is of Jango and his regime with the Mandalorians coming for him.
And so he shot Jango's jetpack, but Jango now sees that the Jedi ships are coming. He's trying to get in touch with the Mandalorian camp. He's telling him to evac. His conlinks going out, and so he runs there on foot. Gets to the hill.
If Jango could just get some reliable tech.
I know, right?
Literally the death of him.
Every time.
I would love to have seen...
The tech makes the Mandalorian, man.
Think about this. I guess we'll get to the end of this and then I have a question.
Anyway, so you see now it's Master Dooku. He's leading the mission against the Mandalorians.
Isn't it interesting that on the cover of this, I believe that's supposed to be Dooku, and the guy on the picture has a green lightsaber?
No. Dooku's right here. He's got a blue lightsaber.
Yeah, I know that. But I'm saying on the cover of, if you look at the cover of this comic in the collection, go back. Blah, 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 blah. Not too far.
It's just like backspace, like you're backspace against like bam.
Look, I think that's totally supposed to be Dooku, and the guy has a green lightsaber.
I don't think so, because Dooku definitely at this point did not have white hair. Because even right
here... Oh, he has brown.
Yeah, even right here, he's still got brown hair.
So who the crap is that? You know what I think? Here's what it is. I think the cover artist sends in like, hey, here's a cool idea.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really cares. Not enough, apparently, for continuity. I don't really even see Dooku in most of this battle. I just see him talking at the top of this hill. But yeah, so the Jedi cut down most of the Mandalorians. Jango kills a bunch of them.
I like how Dooku is like, he's theatrical, Dooku is Christopher Lee. So he's like, remember in episode 2, he's like, Master Windu, you have fought gallantly. Like, he even, uses big words and all that kind of stuff. He's like, worthy of recognition in the Jedi archives. So he's standing at the top of this hill, and he's like, I can't remember what he says, but he's...
Mandalorian, I'm Master Dooku. You stand accused of murder. Surrender now, and we will ensure that you are treated fairly.
Yeah, and Jango says, kill the loudmouth first.
Yeah, he says, Mandalorians open fire and shoot the loudmouth first.
That was pretty ballin'.
It was pretty funny. And then, obviously, the Jedi are just it's just a warm-up for them deflecting all this blaster fire. And so then Jango says, throw away your blasters, use projectile weapons. That's pretty cool. He's calling those audibles. Obviously, the projectile weapons...
Watch those wrist rockets!
Yeah, they were no more effective because they can just be augmented with the Force. You see...
But that's the thing with, like, the Jedi from the prequel era is that they're not in their prime. Like, the stuff we're going to read in the High Republic novels that are coming out, I think is going to be pretty wild. I think that the stuff we see from Luke and Darth Vader and those in the original trilogy, they're getting kind of back to the strong side of the Force. But the Jedi here and into the prequels, I think that maybe because the Sith have been dormant, that their need for sharpness is dormant. Does that make sense? Like, if you're a Jedi, okay, or I guess you put it this way, if you want to put it to sports. If you're a professional athlete and then you go play high school players that are in your sport, you're not going to be ready to then again play professionals. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's kind of like, I always use UFC, but it's kind of like you can be training and you're still going to have what they call ring rust when you get back into that fight. So I think that one of the reasons that people are able to defeat Jedi in this specific time span of, 20 or 30 years during the prequel era is because they're not having to hone and sharpen their skills because there is a legitimate threat on the other side. There's never been a threat on the other side for 1,000 years. Make sense?
Right.
So, like, Luke's having to learn at a rapid pace because he's actually got to fight Vader versus, you know what I'm saying?
No. Back to my hunch. Anyway, Jango's going toe-to-toe with a bunch of these Jedi. He takes out some, and then he realizes he's outmatched after all his teammates are killed.
Yeah.
He basically surrenders.
Sounds a lot like a COD match.
And then Dooku says that they surrendered him to the governor, and he was a slave. And so Sidious says, how did he escape? And this is the end of this comic.
Part 3.
He says, I don't know, but I'm about to ask the only person who does. And you see Jango landing.
Snap.
On the platform.
Hang on, so Jango is invited to where Sidious lives?
No, this is Dooku's place. Sidious is only a hologram.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is the place. I don't think.
Dude,
it's
are
Sereno,
those whenever?
But it might be.
Whenever Dooku's talking to him, all those lightsabers in the background, are those Jedi he's killed? You think?
Almost certainly. In the Dark Disciples comic, you hear about a cabinet that Dooku's got with his collection of.
Dude, Dark Disciple, that's a good book. So he has a cabinet of lightsabers?
Yeah, it says he's got lightsabers on display of all the Jedi that he's killed. It's pretty hardcore. Anyway, so...
Interesting. It's cool though that he keeps his priorities because because Grievous, of course, kind of gets overboard with that sort of thing.
Yeah. So we got this cool
the opening panel right there is amazing.
You can do this is obviously Dooku's hand. This is Jango's hand. I don't know if you can see very well, but... You can see that Jango's blasters are close to Dooku and Dooku's lightsabers by Jango's hand. Obviously an empty gesture on both parts, it turns out, because, as we all know, Dooku has the Force, and Jango has magnetic gauntlets that bring his blasters back to his hands. So he pulls his blasters back, and Dooku's like, I don't sense anything in the Force.
This is one of those areas where I wish there would just been a little bit of talking between the teams, because there's a moment there where Jango in Episode 2 dives on the floor in the arena on Geonosis for his blaster.
Yeah, maybe there was just like a certain range. I don't know.
How sick would it have been if he did that? Of course, you don't have time to explain
the magnetic gauntlets
in the book. In the movie. Still.
Yep.
The continuity would have been appreciated.
Anyway, so he and Dooku are kind of having this stand down. Dooku's still asking questions. Jango has poisoned him with a plague that he is inoculated to because it's native to his home planet. Concord Dawn. And so basically this is where the talk happens because Jango thinks he's disarmed Dooku essentially. He's like, I've got the cure. You're going to sit and listen.
Yeah. I think he feels willing. It's kind of a catch-22 because Jango really starts to open up because he's like, yeah, I'll probably let him die anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think...
When you're dying or when the person in the room with you is going to die, you can say whatever you want to say.
I think Jango just knows enough about Dooku to know that Dooku is a double-crosser and he can't be trusted. So I don't think Jango would open up at all if he thinks that there's still a chance that Dooku still has the upper hand. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's a catch-22 because later on you find out...
Yeah, we all know that it's an empty gesture, but Jango has no idea that Dooku could just heal himself with the Force.
Yeah. Which I think is very interesting.
Yeah. It's the only time I've seen something like that outside of
Darth Bane?
Darth Bane's Path of Destruction. I think there's something about...
But when he gets poisoned...
There's a second poison. That's why he was having trouble. He cured the first poison.
That's right. Yeah. Right. And he goes to Caleb.
Yeah. Anyway, so it talks about how Jango was a slave on a spice runner for a number of years, and then he makes his escape.
Yeah, they just, like, glance over that. Like, that would be hell on Earth. Or whatever planet.
Yeah, that's just not the part they want to focus on again.
Right.
So now we see Jango, he's finally in his full armor. Apparently it's a set of armor that the governor he was enslaved to had restored kind of as a trophy piece.
Right.
And this is, the nice fancy schmancy, like top of the line suit of Mandalorian armor. Which turns out it really isn't, because it was like some... Durasteel alloy, and it's not Beskar, but whatever, we won't get too deep into that. Anyway,
I'm sure when this book was written, it was the nicest thing that they had available, and they've retrofitted it to be Durasteel.
Yeah. And so you see Jango now with his new set of armor makes an attack on Visla's ship. He blasts through the window. I think it was pretty cool that he was flying free in space. I don't think we've ever seen a Mandalorian do that. He's not inside a ship, he's just flying out in space.
Oh, yeah. That is pretty dope.
We won't get into the space physics and why he would have frozen to death, because that nice windbreaker on his arm obviously wouldn't protect him from the cold, but we'll keep going. And then, as Josiah pointed out, a cool little comic strip of Jango doing...
Yeah, it's a roll sequence where there's an explosion and he's like jumping and rolling out of that room into a crouch.
The impact, but you can see like this is...
But it's cool because the colors they use there in that comic, it's like a lighter, not see-through, but you can tell it's kind of like if you were seeing a ghost.
Yeah.
And it's cool. It shows the motion, yeah.
And so he and Vizsla are having a fight to the death. It's just kind of going, one way and then the other. Mm-hmm. It eventually leads into an escape pod.
And you got Vizsla looking like Slagar the Cruel with that burn on the side of his face.
Yeah. Well, I think that's from the blaster burn, where Jango thought he'd kill him the first time. Now they're on this planet. The fight resumes. Punchy, punchy, kicky, kicky. I throw you over the cliff. You get me with the grapple.
You remind me of the guy that used to be on UFC, Mike Greenberg. He would be Joe Rogan's like, wow, look at that arm triangle. Like he's saying like terminology. Mm-hmm. And then Mike would say something, or Mike Goldberg maybe. I can't remember. It's a Colorberg. Anyways, and he'd be like, he's choking him, Joe. Like it's funny because he would say like the obvious. They're really hitting each other, Joe.
Yeah. And so apparently Stick beats Helmet because Vizsla whacks some nice wooden stick. Helmet comes off the head.
That's funny.
Now Jango's bleeding. Punch on the jaw. He's got some nice stubble going.
And Jango's got the thing he uses on Kamino to stop himself from falling down the ramp.
He cuts Vizsla open after Vizsla's poisoned him. But then there are these nice saber-toothed cats on this particular planet.
Oh, dude. Perfect.
I think this is Corellia.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. And so...
How do you know?
Because it says Corellia.
Oh.
On the opening...
Well, you could have mentioned that before you said, I think it's Corellia.
Well, I do think it's Corellia.
Well, I was impressed. I was like, oh, you're right.
Yeah, Corellia.
Well, you impressed me because I was like, oh, what are the context clues? The context clue was facts.
As they often are for me. But yeah, so Vizsla's bleeding. Josiah's mask kills Vizsla.
Just wait.
And they avoid Jango because he's poisoned. And then that takes us to present day. Now
all right, what were you saying?
And now Jango is talking to Dooku.
Can you see me?
Dooku saying, hey, it's been a long time since I've used the living force to restore my body to full health, but not too long.
But not too long, Jango Fett.
And then now Jango's like, now I'm impressed. And essentially, Jango makes his final request. He wants a clone, no growth acceleration, no behavior modification, no tampering. Dooku says, I didn't think you were the sentimental type, Jango. You want a son? And he says, no, an apprentice. He will become Jaster's legacy. And then the deal is struck, and the ultimate clone is born.
The ultimate clone that ends up being the ultimate bounty hunter, the greatest of all time, would wax the floor with the Mandalorian, Boba Fett. You're here, folks. Yep. Sabretooth's responsible for killing Vizsla and Carol Baskin's husband. So here was my question from earlier. Okay, so all things considered, if all of his technology works, jetpack, all that stuff.
Like this. This is worse somehow.
Is this better? I'm being born.
Gross.
I'm like Ace Ventura. Okay, so if his jetpack works, his flamethrower works, like...
I still don't think he stands a chance against Windu.
Okay, how much longer would he last, though?
Like 30 seconds tops.
Do you think he just escapes?
I think Windu pulls him to him with the Force and then cuts his head off. We're talking about Mace Windu here.
I know. I don't like that he died on a technicality.
Yeah, but he would have died anyway, so I don't see what the difference is.
Well, the difference is one's a technicality.
Either way, Boba Fett's taking his dad home in a helmet on Take Your Son to Work Day.
Have you seen that meme where he's like holds up the helmet and the head drops out?
Yeah, I've seen it.
It's just wrong. You guys are wrong for that. But yeah, I think that the backstory to Jango Fett is super important. And now that I'm thinking about it, dude, there's 10 years. If they're gonna do some animation stuff, Clone Wars style stuff, how awesome would the 10 years between Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones be? You could do so much stuff. Mm-hmm. I mean, you could. I would love to see. There's that Age of Republic comic series that they've been doing where it's like, here's what's going on with Jango Fett before Attack of the Clones. Here's what's going on with Qui-Gon Jinn before. Yeah. Before that, like, there's all kinds of comics, and we've
kind of gotten fillers on Qui-Gon. You know what I mean? There's
right.
A lot of stuff
well, that's what I'm saying is that
it would be cool to see like Anakin's early training.
Yeah, like I would love to see
what happened on Cato Nemoidia.
Yeah, I'd like to see stuff on.
I guess that was still between 2 and 3.
That's between 2 and 3. I would love to see. I would love to see.
Doesn't matter because it doesn't count.
There's so much stuff. Like, what are Anakin and Obi-Wan up to? What's Jango Fett up to? What's Count Dooku doing?
Anakin's still seething about Padme for 10 years.
Yeah, there's material. There's 2 or 3 seasons of material, no problem. Yeah. Especially Jango Fett.
If there's 7 seasons of material between 2 and 3,
right?
There's
the main thing is I get that there's not
10 seasons.
There's not a war going on.
1 season per year.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying is there's not a war.
Still a galaxy in unrest.
Yeah.
I mean, because we've already had the blockade on Naboo. Things are already starting to happen.
Things are getting spicy.
Yeah.
What else could you see?
I'll always watch some more Newt Gunray.
Some more Newt Gunray. Or, you know who? Jar Jar.
Jar Jar can die. The only thing I lament about Episode 3 was never getting to see Jar Jar die.
He didn't die. He's alive. He's alive after Episode 6.
Shut your mouth.
He is. He's a clown.
No.
Remember? It's canon. He's alive.
Oh, yeah.
He's alive on Naboo.
Yeah, good thing none of the adults like him, only the kids.
Yep.
Very fitting.
But the kids are the future. Dude, what if he's like... We have to...
What is the lifespan of a Gungan?
I don't know. Look it up. Look it up, Jamie. Dude, there's... What if they're like, we gotta get back to our roots. We fell apart from who we are in the New Republic. Our new Chancellor, New Republic 2.0, Jar Jar Binks.
It says the lifespan of a Gungan is approximately 65 years.
Oh, man. Well, how old is he in the Phantom Menace?
Look it up, Jerry.
This just... Look it up, Jamie. How old is Jar Jar? Dude, this just turned into a Jar Jar episode real quick.
It says... No, that's not the question.
Luke and I are 18 to 20 years old.
Okay, Jar Jar, though.
Yeah, remember when you asked Siri and you're like, hey, Siri, what's this? And he's like, I found this. It's like, I didn't ask what you found. Oops. Was it you or me?
It wasn't me. I have that turned off on my phone.
Was it him? Oh, it was me. Strange.
It doesn't say. It doesn't
say. Well, let's say, okay, even if he was 20 in The Phantom Menace. He'd be 30 by Attack of the Clones. He'd be 55 by
All right, hold on.
A New Hope.
Found a.
So they said 65 years?
So it says he's approximately 20 in episode 1. I found a timetable.
Okay, there you go. So if he's 20, that means he's 30 by episode 2. That means he's
in episode,
33 by episode 3. That means he's 53.
6, that makes him 56.
56. Yeah, dang.
Return of the Jedi.
So he's definitely dead by
for
Force
20
Awakens.
years by The Force Awakens.
Dadgummit.
Thank God. Finally.
Unless...
No.
He's a Sith Lord. And
he's not a Sith Lord. Shut up. I'm so sick of that.
He's unlocked the keys to eternal life. We need to do a Jar Jar episode so we can talk about how much you hate him and how much I love him. That would be a great episode. I talked to him about it earlier this week, and he doesn't want to do it. It'd be fun.
We'll do it. We'll make it happen.
All right, tune in next week to hear all about Jar Jar Binks. So, that's the background on...
The word I'm looking for, I can't say. Is there a preschool toys present?
Prequel toys present, eh?
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's not really a backstory so far that's very in-depth about Jango Fett in the canon. I would love to see... I want to know, and, I don't want The Mandalorian to backtrack and talk about Jango. I get that it's about Din Djarin, and I like that. And I like that it's about the child and all that stuff. But I would like to know... Like, what's in here that we can't just make canon? There's a lot of... there's some things. But I would like to know his backstory. And I think that Jango and Boba both, maybe Jango more than Boba, gets kind of a bad rap in the Mandalorian way of things. But I think that he could definitely... I think he should be brought back into the fold. I think at the end of the day, from what we know of him, he was a great dad. And he was proud of what he did. He wasn't... I don't think that he was inherently evil like the Dooku's and Palpatines of the world, and I think he gets a bad rap because...
I don't necessarily think Dooku was inherently evil.
Hot take.
After all the reading I've done about him.
You think that he was just misguided?
I think that he
was definitely groomed.
He was polluted by the fallacies of the Jedi because there were certain things that he was jaded towards that were relevant, that were true. You know what I mean?
That's what's so sad about Dooku's life. Again, going back to our tragedy of Darth Count Dooku, is that a lot of the things that he felt disenfranchised about
were legitimate concerns. Like in this comic, his fight against the Mandalorians, he said that was one of the many mistakes of the Jedi Council.
Dooku, in his Jedi Prime, would have gotten along with Luke Skywalker in his Jedi Prime.
Perhaps.
Does it make sense though?
Because
Luke has the hindsight of learning from Obi-Wan and Yoda and his dad.
Right, and where the Jedi had gone wrong.
And I think that the stuff that he saw that was wrong were some of the things that Dooku and Qui-Gon didn't agree with. And then, in Episode 2, you have Dooku saying, I wish Qui-Gon was here right now, I could use his guidance. And Obi-Wan says... I don't think that he would have joined the Separatists, and I definitely don't think he would have gone dark side. But I do wonder if Qui-Gon could have pulled Dooku back a little bit. Probably not.
No, I don't think so. Dooku was never one to be swayed by familial relations.
Yeah,
I think have his own sister killed.
I think that Dooku was pulled to the dark because there was someone there that was so much more powerful,
right,
who had answers that nobody else had.
Towards the end, it was all about the power.
Yeah.
For sure.
But yeah, it started rough. But there you go. The history of Jango Fett before Attack of the Clones and Legends. But again, you can laugh both. In my mind, that's the real story until they give me something else.
Right.
And so, you can't tell me any otherwise. And so, that's it for this week's episode. So, may the Force be with you.
And you know who was the ultimate Sith Lord? Was Palpatine. And you know what Palpatine had to say? The only family you have here is me.
See you next week.